The night Damien Vexley learned he was worth less than a signature, he was standing in his uncle's office holding a glass of bourbon he would never finish. The city sprawled below, neon and concrete, blood and money, and he'd believed he owned every inch of it. But the folder on the mahogany desk told a different story. Inside, a wedding contract, a stranger's photograph, and an ultimatum that tasted like poison. Marry her, merge the families, or disappear. Damien had killed men for less than disrespect. But you can't kill your way out of checkmate. If you want to know how a king becomes a pawn, and how the pawn he married turned out to be the queen, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about power, Damien Vexley had learned early, was that it didn't ask permission. It took. It consumed. It rebuilt the world in its own image until everything, every street corner, every politician's smile, every cop's blind eye, bent in the same direction, toward you. And for 29 years, the world had bent toward Damien. He stood now at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, 30 stories above the city that feared his name, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pride. Just the cold, hollow certainty that this was all there was. Control, order. The machinery of violence spinning smoothly beneath a veneer of legitimacy. Behind him, his phone buzzed for the fourth time in 10 minutes. He ignored it. Meetings bored him. Negotiations bored him. Even the occasional need to remind someone why crossing the Vexley family was a terminal mistake. That had started to bore him too. Mr. Vexley. His head of security, Marcus, appeared in the doorway. 60 years old, scar across his jaw, loyal as a dog, and twice as vicious. Your uncle is waiting. Damien didn't turn. Tell him I'm busy. He said it's not a request. That made Damien pause. His uncle, Victor Crown, didn't summon people. Victor moved like smoke, always present, never quite visible. He sat on the syndicate's council, managed the old guard families, and smiled through every board meeting like a benevolent grandfather while bodies disappeared into the river. Damien had always assumed Victor was too careful to be dangerous. Where? The estate. He said to come alone. Now Damien turned. Marcus's expression was unreadable, but something flickered behind his eyes. Concern, maybe. Or pity. Alone, Damien repeated. Those were his words. Damien grabbed his jacket. If I'm not back in 2 hours, burn the place down. Marcus didn't smile. Understood. Also, the Crown Estate sat 40 minutes outside the city, hidden behind gates and old-growth trees that had seen more blood than a battlefield. Damien's car pulled through the entrance just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything in shades of red and shadow. Victor was waiting in his study, a room that smelled like leather and old cigars, lined with books Victor had probably never read. He stood as Damien entered, arms open, face warm. Damien, thank you for coming. You didn't give me a choice. Victor's smile didn't falter. Sit, please. Damien remained standing. What do you want, Victor? The older man sighed, moving to the bar cart and pouring 2 bourbons. He held one out. Damien took it, but didn't drink. You've done well, Victor said, settling into his chair. Your father would be proud. Damien's father had been dead for 6 years. A heart attack, officially. Unofficially, the kind of heart attack that happened when someone decided your usefulness had expired. Get to the point. Victor's expression shifted, just slightly. The warmth bled away, replaced by something colder, sharper. The families are fracturing, he said. Rossini is making moves in the north. The Volkovs are testing our eastern borders. We're strong, but strength without unity is just a target. So unify them. I intend to. Victor opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk. With this. Damien stared at the folder like it was a live grenade. What is it? Your future. Slowly, Damien picked it up. Inside was a photograph, a young woman, mid-20s, brown hair pulled back severely, glasses perched on a forgettable face. Plain, unremarkable. The kind of person you'd pass on the street and never remember. Beneath the photo was a contract. Thick, legal, binding. A marriage arrangement, Victor said, between you and my daughter. The words didn't register at first. Damien read them again. Then a third time. You're joking. I've never been more serious. Damien looked up. You have a daughter? Alara. She's been studying abroad, business, linguistics, strategy. I kept her out of the life, until now. And now you want to trade her like livestock? Victor's eyes went flat. I want to secure our future. Rossini and Volkov are circling because they think we're weak. They think the next generation is soft. A marriage alliance, your name, my blood, sends a message. We are united. We are unbreakable. Damien dropped the folder back on the desk. Find someone else. There is no one else. Victor stood, and for the first time Damien saw something dangerous beneath the grandfatherly facade. You are the face of this family, the heir. Without you, there is no alliance. Then there's no alliance. Then there's no you. The room went silent. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Damien's pulse hammered in his ears. Is that a threat? Victor smiled, gentle, terrible. It's reality. You marry Alara, or you step down, and we both know what happens to men who step down in this life. Exile. Disappearance. An unmarked grave in the woods. Damien's hand tightened around the bourbon glass. He wanted to throw it, wanted to put Victor through the window. But he knew that Marcus wasn't the only guard outside, that Victor hadn't called him here without insurance. You've already decided, Damien said quietly. Yes. When? 2 weeks. The wedding will be private, family only. Afterward, we'll make the announcement. Damien set the glass down carefully. And if I refuse? Victor's smile widened. You won't. Damien didn't remember the drive back to the city. He remembered fury, white hot, choking, and the sick realization that he'd been outmaneuvered. Victor had built this cage carefully, brick by brick, and Damien had walked right in. By the time he reached his penthouse, his phone was full of messages. The council had already been informed. Congratulations poured in like vultures circling a corpse. He poured another bourbon and stood at the window, staring down at the city that was supposed to be his. For the first time in his life, Damien Vexley felt powerless. The woman arrived on a Tuesday. Damien had spent the past week trying to find a way out. Lawyers told him the contract was ironclad. His own people, men who owed him their lives, suddenly had excuses, prior commitments, reasons they couldn't help him break an arrangement with Victor Crown. Even Marcus, loyal Marcus, had looked at him with something like sympathy and said, sometimes the only move is forward. So when the door to his penthouse opened and she walked in, Damien was ready to hate her. Alara Crown was exactly as unremarkable as her photograph. Brown hair scraped into a bun, glasses that seemed designed to hide rather than enhance, a gray coat that hung shapeless over a frame that could have been anything underneath. She moved carefully, precisely, like someone who'd learned that taking up space was dangerous. She stopped 3 feet from him and met his gaze without flinching. Mr. Vexley. Her voice was even, controlled. Miss Crown. Alara is fine. Damien gestured to the chair across from him. She sat. He didn't. I assume you know why you're here, he said. To be married to a man who doesn't want me in order to secure a political alliance I had no say in. She adjusted her glasses. Yes, I'm aware. Damien blinked. He'd expected meekness. Tears, maybe. Pleading. Not this calm, clinical dissection of their situation. And you're fine with that. Does it matter? It should. Alara tilted her head slightly. You're angry. That's understandable, but your anger is misdirected. I didn't arrange this any more than you did. Then why agree? Because refusal wasn't an option. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, different from the one Victor had shown him, thicker. She slid it across the table. For either of us. Damien stared at the folder. What is this? Leverage. He opened it slowly. Inside were documents, financial records, transcripts of private meetings, photographs of council members in compromising positions, information that should have been buried under 6 layers of security and a dozen dead whistleblowers. How did you get this? He asked quietly. The same way I survive. Alara stood. By being underestimated. She moved toward the door, then paused. Our wedding is in 10 days. I suggest you prepare yourself. And Mr. Bexley. She looked back, and for just a moment, something flickered behind those plain glasses. Something sharp. Don't assume you know who I am just because you've seen my face. Then she was gone. Damien stood alone in his penthouse, holding a folder full of secrets that could topple governments, and realized he'd just made a terrible mistake. He'd dismissed her. The wedding was arranged like a corporate merger. No flowers, no music, just a judge, 2 witnesses, and a contract that bound Damien to a woman he'd spoken to exactly once. The venue was Victor's estate, the same room where Damien had been given his ultimatum. Poetic, in a sick kind of way. Alara arrived in a simple white dress that could have been bought off a rack. Her hair was still pulled back. The glasses remained. She looked like someone attending a deposition, not a wedding. Damien wore black. He always wore black. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. The judge spoke. They repeated words that meant nothing. Rings were exchanged, platinum bands, no stones, as cold as the hands that wore them. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Damien leaned in and pressed his lips to Alara's for exactly 2 seconds. She didn't react, didn't soften, just accepted it like a handshake. Afterward, there was champagne. Victor gave a speech about unity and strength in the future. The council members smiled and clapped. Damien drank and said nothing. Alara stood beside him, perfectly still, perfectly forgettable. At one point, Rossini, a barrel-chested man with too many rings, approached them. "Congratulations," he said, though his eyes were assessing, calculating. "I hear your wife is quite accomplished." "Is she?" Damien asked. Rossini's gaze slid to Alara. 3 degrees, speaks 5 languages. Spent 2 years in Geneva working with international finance. Impressive resume for someone so modest. Alara smiled, bland, pleasant. "You're very kind. I'm curious," Rossini continued. "What does a woman with your background want with our world?" "Security," Alara said simply. "Same as everyone else." Rossini laughed, but there was no humor in it. He wandered off, and Damien caught the look Alara gave his retreating back. Just for a second, her expression shifted. Something cold moved behind her eyes. Then it was gone, and she was unremarkable again. "What was that?" Damien asked quietly. "What was what?" "That look." Alara adjusted her glasses. "I don't know what you mean." But she did. Damien was certain of it. They left the estate together in Damien's car. The plan, such as it was, involved Alara moving into the penthouse. Separate rooms, separate lives, a marriage in name only, maintained for the cameras and the council. The drive back was silent. Alara stared out the window at the passing city lights. Damien watched her reflection in the glass. "Why did you really agree to this?" he asked finally. She didn't look at him. "I told you, refusal wasn't an option. You could have run." To where? Now she did turn. "You think your uncle doesn't have reach? That there's anywhere I could go he couldn't find me?" She shook her head. "Running is for people with hope. I'm pragmatic." "You don't seem afraid of him." "I'm terrified of him." Her voice was flat. "But fear doesn't change reality. It just makes you careless." Damien processed that. "You're not what I expected." "Good." "Why good?" Alara looked back out the window. "Because expectations are weaknesses, and I can't afford to be weak." The penthouse had been prepared for her arrival. A second bedroom, fully furnished. A closet stocked with clothes that someone, probably Victor's people, had selected. All neutral colors, all designed to blend. Alara examined the room with the same careful precision she applied to everything. Then she turned to Damien. "Thank you for accommodating me." "I didn't have a choice." "Neither did I." She paused. "But we can make this tolerable. Stay out of my way, I'll stay out of yours." "That simple?" "That simple." Damien nodded slowly. "Fine, but I have one rule, which is no secrets." He gestured to the folder she'd given him, still sitting on his desk. "You want to play games with the council? Fine, but not with me. I need to know what you're doing." Alara's expression didn't change. Agreed. Same goes for you. Deal. She extended her hand. Damien shook it. Her grip was firm, her skin cool. Good night, Mr. Vexley. Damien. She smiled, just barely. Good night, Damien. Then she closed the door to her room, and Damien was alone again. He poured another bourbon and stood at the window, staring at the city. Below, people moved like ants, unaware that their king had just been married off like a bargaining chip. Somewhere in the penthouse, Alara was unpacking, settling in, becoming part of his life whether he wanted it or not. Damien raised his glass to the skyline. Here's to cages, he muttered, and drank. The first week passed in uncomfortable silence. Alara kept to herself. She woke early, spent hours in her room working on her laptop, and only emerged for meals. When she did speak, it was polite, distant. She treated Damien like a roommate, not a husband. He told himself he preferred it that way. But at night, he found himself listening, waiting, wondering what she was doing behind that closed door. On the 8th day, Marcus appeared in Damien's office. We have a problem. Damien looked up from the contract he'd been reviewing. What kind of problem? The Volkovs made a move, hit one of our distribution centers in the north. 3 dead, $500,000 in product gone. Damien's jaw tightened. When? 2 hours ago. And you're just telling me now? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to confirm details first, but there's something else. He pulled out his phone, showing Damien a photograph. This was left at the scene. It was a playing card, the Queen of Spades, and written across it in blood-red ink, checkmate. Damien stared at the image. They're taunting us. They're testing us, Marcus corrected, seeing if the marriage changed anything, if you're still willing to fight. Of course I'm willing to fight. Then we need to respond, hard, make an example. Damien nodded slowly. Set it up. I want... The door opened. Alara stood there, still in her shapeless clothes, hair still pulled back. But her expression was different, focused. I need to talk to you, she said. Marcus glanced at Damien. Damien waved him off. Give us a minute. Marcus left, and Alara closed the door behind him. She walked to Damien's desk and placed her laptop down, turning it so he could see the screen. It was a financial ledger. Rows and rows of transactions, dates, account numbers. What is this? Damien asked. Volkov's supply chain. Alara tapped the screen. I've been tracking their movements for the past week. They're not just hitting your distribution, they're consolidating. Buying up smaller operations, absorbing them. They're building towards something. Damien leaned forward. How did you get this? I have contacts, people who owe me favors. She met his gaze. You're planning to retaliate, aren't you? How did you? Because it's what anyone would do. But if you hit them now, you're playing into their hands. They want you to react emotionally, to overextend. So what do you suggest? Alara pulled up another document. Cut their funding. These 3 accounts, she highlighted them, are their primary cash flow. Freeze them, quietly. They'll panic, pull resources to cover the gap, and leave their northern operations exposed. Damien studied the screen. It was elegant, surgical, the kind of move that required patience and precision, 2 things he'd never been good at. Why are you helping me? He asked. Because you're my husband. She said it simply, like it was obvious. And if you fall, I fall with you. Damien sat back. You're smarter than you look. I know. Alara closed the laptop. So are you going to listen to me, or are you going to start a war you can't win? He should have been angry, should have resented the implication that he needed her advice, but instead he found himself smiling. All right, he said, we'll do it your way. Alara nodded once. Good. She picked up her laptop and headed for the door. Alara. She paused. Thank you. She didn't turn around. Don't thank me yet. And then she was gone, leaving Damien alone with the distinct feeling that he'd just seen something dangerous. Not the woman in the shapeless coat, the person hiding underneath. Alara's plan worked. Within 3 days, Volkov's accounts were frozen. Within a week, their northern operations collapsed. The council noticed. Rossini asked questions. Victor smiled and nodded and said nothing. And Damien started paying attention. He watched Alara move through the penthouse, always quiet, always controlled. But he noticed things now. The way she listened to phone calls, absorbing every detail. The way she positioned herself in meetings, always near the door, always with an exit. The way her fingers drummed against her leg when she was thinking, like she was running calculations no one else could see. She was brilliant, and she was hiding it. The question was, why? On the 14th night of their marriage, Damien couldn't sleep. He poured a drink and stood at the window staring at the city. Behind him, he heard a door open. Alara emerged from her room, but this Alara was different. Her hair was down, dark waves falling past her shoulders. No glasses, no shapeless coat, just a silk robe that clung to curves he hadn't known existed. She moved differently too, confident, deliberate. She saw him and stopped. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "Can't sleep?" she asked. Her voice was different too, lower, richer. "No." Damien's throat was dry. "You?" "I don't sleep much." She walked to the bar, poured herself a drink. Her movements were fluid, graceful. Too much to think about. "Like what?" She smiled, a real smile this time, sharp and knowing. "Like whether you figured it out yet." "Figured what out?" Alara turned to face him fully, and Damien felt his pulse spike. This woman, this version of her, was nothing like the one who'd walked into his penthouse 2 weeks ago. This woman was dangerous. "That I'm not here by accident," she said softly. "That I didn't agree to this marriage because I had no choice." She took a sip of her drink. "I agreed because it was exactly where I needed to be." Damien's hand tightened around his glass. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I've spent 5 years building a network your uncle doesn't know about. That I've been moving money, making alliances, positioning pieces on a board he thinks he controls." She stepped closer. "I'm talking about the fact that you were never the prize, Damien. You were the door." His mind raced. "To what?" "To everything." Alara set her glass down. "Your uncle thinks he's securing his legacy, but what he's really done is put me inside the one place he can't touch. Your home, your bed, your trust." "I don't trust you." "Not yet." She smiled. "But you will." Damien should have been furious, should have thrown her out, but instead he found himself fascinated, drawn in. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand something." Alara's expression softened, just slightly. "I'm not your enemy. I'm your only ally, and if you're smart, you'll realize that before it's too late." "Too late for what?" She reached up and touched his face, just her fingertips gentle against his jaw. The contact sent electricity through him. "For both of us," she whispered. Then she pulled away, picked up her drink, and walked back to her room. The door closed softly behind her. Damien stood frozen, his heart hammering, his mind spinning. He'd been married for 2 weeks, and he'd just realized he had no idea who his wife actually was, but he was going to find out, even if it destroyed him. The next morning, Alara was back to being invisible. Hair pulled tight, glasses on, gray sweater that swallowed her frame. She sat at the breakfast table with her laptop, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails like the woman from last night had never existed. Damien watched her from across the room, trying to reconcile the two versions. The mousy academic and the silk-wrapped revelation. They couldn't be the same person, but they were. "Sleep well?" she asked without looking up. "No." She took another sip. "You should try meditation. Helps with racing thoughts." Damien crossed to the table and sat down across from her. "We need to talk about last night." "Do we?" "You told me you've been planning this, that I was a door." Alara's fingers paused on the keyboard. Then she closed the laptop carefully and folded her hands on top of it. "I did. So what now? I'm supposed to just accept that my wife is running some kind of shadow operation inside my own home?" "You're supposed to decide whether you want to survive what's coming." Her voice was calm, clinical. "Because it is coming, Damien. Your uncle didn't marry us to unite the families. He married us to control you." "I know that." "Do you?" She leaned forward slightly. "Then you also know he's been moving pieces for months, consolidating loyalty, making promises. The council members who congratulated you at our wedding, half of them have already pledged to him." Damien's jaw tightened. You have proof? I have recordings, financial transfers, signed agreements. She paused. I also have a list of the people still loyal to you. It's shorter than you'd like. The words hit like a punch. Damien had spent years building his reputation, his power. The idea that it could be dismantled so quietly, so efficiently, made his blood run cold. Why tell me this? He asked. If you're working against Victor, why not just let him destroy me and pick up the pieces yourself? Alar's expression softened, just barely. Because I don't want pieces. I want a partner. You don't even know me. I know enough. She stood, walking to the window. The morning light caught her profile, and for a moment Damien saw both versions of her at once. I know you're smarter than you pretend to be. I know you're bored with the violence and the posturing. I know you built an empire because it was expected, not because you wanted it. You're wrong. Am I? She glanced back at him. Then why haven't you killed me yet? The question hung in the air between them. Damien could have had her removed a dozen times over the past 2 weeks, could have made it look like an accident, a tragedy. No one would have questioned it, but he hadn't. I'm not in the habit of killing people without reason, he said. No, you're in the habit of killing people with very specific reasons. Alar turned fully to face him. But I'm not a threat, I'm an asset. And if you'd stop looking at me like a problem to solve, you might actually see that. Damien stood slowly. What do you want from me? Trust, time, access to your network. She counted on her fingers. And in return, I'll give you something your uncle can't take away. Which is? A future that doesn't end with a bullet in your spine. Damien studied her face, searching for deception, but all he saw was certainty. Cold, absolute certainty. I'll think about it, he said finally. Alara smiled, small, knowing. That's all I ask. She picked up her laptop and headed for her room. At the door, she paused. Oh, and Damien, you might want to check your offshore accounts. Someone's been skimming. Small amounts, untraceable. But it's happening. She disappeared before he could respond. Damien immediately called his financial advisor. 20 minutes later, he had confirmation. 3 accounts, each missing exactly 0.03% over the past 6 months. Amounts so small they'd gone unnoticed, but combined, they added up to nearly $2 million. He stared at the numbers on his screen, rage building in his chest. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Found it yet? Damien called her. She answered on the first ring. How long have you known? He demanded. 3 weeks. I flagged it before we were married. And you didn't think to mention it? I wanted to see if you'd notice on your own. Her tone was matter-of-fact. You didn't. That's why you need me. Damien wanted to argue, wanted to throw the phone across the room, but she was right. He'd been so focused on the visible threats that he'd missed the quiet erosion happening beneath his feet. Who's doing it? He asked. I'm still tracing the endpoint, but the routing suggests someone with council access, someone who knows your security protocols. Victor, or someone working for him. Alara paused. Either way, it's a message. They're not trying to bankrupt you. They're showing you they can reach you anywhere. Damien closed his eyes. What do you need? Access to your financial systems. All of them. That's a lot of trust for someone I barely know. Yes, Alara said quietly. It is. The line went silent. Damien thought about his options. Trust her and risk everything. Don't trust her and die slowly, piece by piece, until Victor decided he was expendable. Fine, he said. But if you burn me, you'll kill me. I know. She didn't sound concerned. Send me the access codes. I'll have answers by tonight. She hung up. Damien sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. 2 weeks ago, he'd been untouchable. Now he was married to a woman who knew more about his empire than he did, bleeding money to an enemy he couldn't identify and trusting a stranger with the keys to his kingdom. His father would have called him weak. His father was dead. Damien sent the codes. That night, the council convened for their monthly meeting. 12 men, 1 woman, all seated around a table in Victor's estate. Damien attended alone, as always. But this time, he noticed things he'd missed before. The way Rossini sat too close to Victor, the way Chen avoided eye contact, the way Malik's smile never reached his eyes. These weren't allies. They were wolves, circling. Victor called the meeting to order with his usual grandfatherly warmth. They discussed territory, shipments, disputes. Everything smooth, everything polite. Then Victor cleared his throat. Before we adjourn, I'd like to address the recent turbulence. The room went quiet. Damien felt every eye shift toward him. The Volkov situation has been resolved, Victor continued, thanks in large part to strategic financial maneuvering that cut off their supply chain. Rossini leaned back. Maneuvering you orchestrated? Actually, no. Victor's smile widened. That was my daughter's work. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Damien kept his expression neutral. But inside, alarm bells rang. Victor was giving Alara credit. Publicly. Why? Your daughter? Chen asked. The one who married Damien? The very same. Alara has quite a mind for finance. I thought it was time the council benefited from her expertise. Damien's hands clenched under the table. This was a power play. Victor was positioning Alara as his proxy, his voice inside Damien's marriage. If the council started going to her for advice, Damien would be cut out of his own decisions. With all respect, Damien said carefully, my wife's talents are appreciated, but council business should remain with council members. Victor's eyes gleamed. Of course, I'm simply suggesting we utilize all available resources, unless you object to your wife contributing to our success. It was a trap, object, and he looked controlling, threatened by a woman's intelligence. Agree, and he opened the door for Victor to manipulate Alara's growing influence. I don't object, Damien said, as long as all contributions go through proper channels. Naturally, Victor raised his glass. To family, and to unity. The council echoed the toast. Damien drank and tasted acid. After the meeting, Rossini cornered him in the hallway. Your wife is impressive, he said, too casually. Victor speaks very highly of her. Victor is her father, of course he does. True, Rossini lit a cigar. But I wonder, where do her loyalties lie? With her blood or her vows? Damien met his gaze. That's not your concern. Isn't it? We're all invested in this alliance. If the bride proves more valuable than the groom? He shrugged. Well, that would complicate things. Damien stepped closer, voice dropping. If you're suggesting something, say it clearly. Rossini smiled around his cigar. Just an observation. Your wife has access now. To your accounts, your operations, your secrets. Victor's daughter, sitting in your home learning everything. He exhaled smoke. Some might call that dangerous. Some might call it marriage. Some might. Rossini clapped him on the shoulder. Just be careful, Damien. The people closest to us are always the ones who know exactly where to put the knife. He walked away, leaving Damien standing in the hallway with a cold knot in his stomach. Was Rossini warning him or threatening him? Either way, the message was clear. The council was watching, and they were starting to wonder who really held the power in his marriage. Damien returned to the penthouse near midnight. The lights were low. He expected Alara to be asleep, but she was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, files spread around her. She looked up as he entered. No glasses tonight, hair down, a silk shirt that shimmered in the lamplight. How was the meeting? She asked. Your father threw you to the wolves. Alara's expression didn't change. I know, I was listening. Damien stopped. You were what? She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was an audio file, still recording. He could hear his own voice, Victor's, the low murmur of conversation. How? I had Marcus plant a device before the meeting. Small, undetectable. It broadcast directly to me. She closed the laptop. I told you, I don't leave things to chance. Damien should have been furious. She'd bugged a council meeting without his knowledge, without his permission. But instead, he felt something else. Admiration, maybe. Or fear. You heard what Rossini said. I did. And? Alara stood, walking around the table to face him. And he's right to be suspicious. I am dangerous. I do have access. And if I wanted to destroy you, I could do it a dozen different ways before breakfast. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. She stopped inches from him. But here's what Rossini doesn't understand. What none of them understand. I don't want to destroy you, Damien. I want to rebuild you. Into what? Into someone who can't be controlled. Her hand came up, fingers brushing his chest, right over his heart. Right now, you're reactive. You wait for threats and respond. That's not power. That's survival. And you're going to teach me power? I'm going to teach you strategy. Her eyes locked onto his. But first, you need to decide if you can handle it. Handle what? Me. All of me. She stepped back and the distance felt deliberate. Because I'm not going to be the quiet little wife who stays in her room and pretends to be harmless. If we're doing this, we're doing it as partners, equals. That means you trust me with your empire, and I trust you with mine. You have an empire? Elara smiled, slow, dangerous. You have no idea what I have. Damien's pulse hammered. This woman, this maddening, brilliant, terrifying woman, was offering him something he'd never had. Not control, not dominance, but partnership. The kind built on mutual respect and shared risk. It should have scared him. It did scare him. Show me, he said. Alara's smile widened. Tomorrow. Tonight you should rest. You're going to need it. She brushed past him, trailing silk and secrets, and disappeared into her room. Damien stood alone in the dim penthouse, wondering if he'd just made the best decision of his life. Or the last one. The next morning, Elara took him to a part of the city he rarely visited. The industrial district where warehouses crouched like sleeping giants, and the smell of rust and oil hung thick in the air. She led him to a nondescript building, punched in a code, and the door clicked open. Inside was a command center. Monitors lined the walls, displaying feeds from across the city. Financial data scrolled on one screen, surveillance footage on another, maps with color-coded markers showing territory, movement, transactions. 3 people worked at terminals, young, focused, barely glancing up when Elara entered. "This is my operation," she said simply. Damien walked slowly through the room, taking it in. "How long have you been building this?" 5 years. Since I turned 21 and my father gave me access to his accounts. She gestured to the screens. I started small, tracking shipments, following money. Then I started building my own network. People who owed me favors, people who wanted out but didn't know how. Out of what? The life. Elara's voice softened. Not everyone chooses this world, Damien. Some are born into it, some are forced. I started helping them disappear. New identities, new cities, clean money. In return, they feed me information. Damien stared at her. You're running an underground railroad for criminals. I'm running a humanitarian operation that happens to involve criminals, she corrected. There's a difference. Victor knows about this? Victor knows I manage charitable foundations. Legal, above board, tax deductible. She smiled. He has no idea where the money actually goes. One of the workers looked up. Elara, we've got movement on the northern accounts. She crossed to the terminal. Damien followed. On the screen was a map showing fund transfers, small amounts, routing through multiple accounts before landing in offshore holdings. That's the skimming operation, Elara said. I've been tracking it for 3 weeks, and I finally found the source. She pulled up a document. Damien's stomach dropped. It was his own signature. Authorization forms for transfers he'd never approved. Dates and amounts that matched the missing money exactly. Someone's forging your approvals, Elara said. Someone with access to your personal documents, your signature, your security clearances. Marcus? No, Marcus is loyal. This is someone higher, someone on the council. Damien's mind raced. Victor. Or someone working for him. Elara pulled up another screen. But here's where it gets interesting. The money isn't going to Victor, it's going here. She highlighted an account. Damien recognized the routing number. That's one of my humanitarian foundations, he said slowly. Exactly. Elara's eyes were sharp. Someone is stealing from you and funneling it into accounts bearing my name. If this came to light, it would look like I'm embezzling, like I married you to rob you blind. Damien felt cold certainty settle over him. It's a setup. A very good one. Elara closed the screens. When the council discovers this, and they will, because whoever's doing it wants them to, you'll look like a fool who got played by his wife. I'll look like a criminal. And Victor? She paused. Victor will step in to clean up the mess. He'll position himself as the only one who can restore order, and we'll both be expendable. Exactly. Damien turned away, rage and panic warring in his chest. He'd been outmaneuvered again, trapped in a scheme so elegant, so perfectly constructed, that even seeing it didn't show him the way out. "What do we do?" he asked. Alara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steel. "We set a trap of our own." The plan was simple, dangerous, and required Damien to trust Alara completely. They would let the scheme play out. Let the money continue flowing into the foundation accounts, but they would also start moving assets quietly, carefully, into hidden reserves that Victor couldn't touch. When the trap finally sprung, they'd have resources to fight back. "It's going to get worse before it gets better," Alara warned. "Victor will accelerate once he thinks we're vulnerable. The council will turn on you. You'll lose allies, territory, reputation. And then? Then we prove it was him. We show the council the forgeries, the routing, the setup. We turn his own weapon against him. That's a lot of faith in evidence. It's a lot of faith in you." Alara met his gaze. "Can you hold your ground while everything falls apart? Can you trust me when everyone else is telling you I'm the enemy?" Damien thought about it, really thought about it. His whole life he'd relied on control, on force, on the certainty that power came from dominance. But this required something else: patience, strategy, partnership. "Yes," he said, "I can." Alara smiled, genuine this time, warm. "Then we have a chance." She held out her hand. Damien took it. Her grip was strong, steady. "Partners?" she asked. "Partners." Over the next 2 weeks, the world began to crumble. The skimming operation went public. An anonymous tip to the council, backed by documents showing transfers from Damien's accounts to Alara's foundations. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Rossini called an emergency session. The council convened, and Damien walked into a room full of hostile faces. "Care to explain this?" Rossini threw the documents across the table. Damien picked them up, scanned them, kept his expression neutral. "I'm looking at it." "You're looking at evidence of embezzlement. $2 million siphoned over 6 months into accounts controlled by your wife. These signatures are forged." "Are they?" Victor spoke up, voice heavy with disappointment. "Damien, I understand this is difficult, but the evidence is manufactured." Damien's voice cut like glass. "Someone is framing us." "Us?" Chen leaned forward. "So you're claiming your wife is innocent?" "I'm claiming we're both being set up." Malik laughed, short, sharp. "Convenient. The wife you barely know, who has access to everything, steals millions, and you claim conspiracy." "It's the truth." "The truth," Rossini said slowly, "is that you married a woman you didn't vet. A woman with her own agenda. And now you're paying the price." Damien felt the room closing in. They'd already decided. The narrative was written. He was the fool. Alara was the thief. And Victor was the savior, waiting in the wings. "I'm asking for time," Damien said. "To investigate. To prove—" "You're asking us to ignore evidence." Victor's voice was gentle, devastating. "I'm sorry, Damien, but until this is resolved, the council has no choice but to suspend your authority." The words landed like a death sentence. Suspended authority meant no access to operations, no control over territory, no voice in decisions. It meant being stripped of everything except the title. "This is a coup," Damien said quietly. Victor's expression was pure sympathy. "This is protection. For the family. For all of us." He looked around the table. "All in favor?" 11 hands went up. Only Damien stayed down. "Motion passes." Victor stood. "Damien, you'll retain your seat, but operational control transfers to the council until this matter is resolved. We'll reconvene in 30 days. The meeting adjourned. Damien sat frozen as the room emptied. Victor approached, placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, nephew, truly. But you must understand, the family comes first." Damien looked up at him. "Did you do this?" Victor's expression didn't flicker. I'm trying to save you from yourself. He walked away, leaving Damien alone in the empty room. For the first time in his life, Damien Vexley had nothing. No power, no authority, no control, just a wife who might be his only ally, or his final betrayal. He returned to the penthouse in silence. Marcus drove, but even he seemed subdued. The city passed outside the window, still moving, still living, still pretending Damien mattered. Alara was waiting when he walked in. She took one look at his face and knew. They suspended you. Yes. Good. Damien's head snapped up. Good? It means Victor's moving faster than I expected. He's confident, overconfident. She pulled up her laptop. And that's when people make mistakes. I just lost everything, Alara. No. She looked at him, eyes fierce. You lost what they could take. You still have what matters. Which is? She walked to him close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. Me, she said simply. And I don't lose. Damien stared at her, this impossible woman who'd walked into his life like a ghost and turned into a firestorm. Against every instinct, every lesson, every warning, he believed her. What do we do now? He asked. Alara smiled. Dangerous. Beautiful. Now, we let them think they've won. She kissed him then, sudden, fierce, claiming. Damien froze for half a second before responding, his hands coming up to frame her face, pulling her closer. She tasted like mint and danger and something he couldn't name. When she pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Was that part of the plan? Damien asked. No? Alara's smile softened. That was off script. Should we? Later. She stepped back businesslike again, though her lips were still flushed. Right now we have work to do. And just like that, the world shifted. Damien had walked into Victor's trap. But he wasn't alone. And that, he was starting to realize, might be the most dangerous thing of all. The work started immediately. Alara transformed the penthouse into a war room, covering the dining table with files, laptops, and surveillance equipment that appeared from places Damien didn't know she'd been hiding them. She worked with the focused intensity of a surgeon, and Damien found himself watching her as much as helping her. Stop staring and start reading, she said without looking up, sliding a folder toward him. These are the council members' financial records for the past 18 months. Look for patterns, unusual deposits, meetings that don't match official schedules, anything that connects them to Victor beyond normal business. Damien opened the folder. How did you get these? I told you. I have people who owe me favors. She typed something on her laptop, frowned at the screen. Marcus is loyal to you, right? With his life. Good. I need him to do something that might get him killed. Damien's hand stilled on the papers. What? Alara finally looked up. Victor has a private server. Physical, not cloud-based. He keeps it in his estate, in a room that requires biometric access. That server contains the real financial records, the ones that show where the money actually went, who authorized the forgeries, everything we need to prove the setup. And you want Marcus to break in and steal it. I want Marcus to create a distraction while I break in and copy it. She said it like she was proposing a dinner reservation. He doesn't need to go inside, just draw the security away long enough for me to get in and out. Absolutely not. Damien! No. He stood, the chair scraping back. You're not going into Victor's estate. If you're caught, I won't be caught. You don't know that. I do, actually. Alara's voice was patient, like she was explaining something to a child. I've been in that estate 17 times in the past 3 years. I know the guard rotations, the camera blind spots, the security protocols. I helped design half of them. Damien stared at her. You what? Victor asked for my input when he upgraded his systems. He thought he was getting free consulting from his brilliant daughter. Her smile was sharp. What he was actually doing was showing me every weakness. That doesn't make it safe. Nothing about this is safe. Alara stood, moving around the table to face him. But it's necessary. Without that server, we have nothing. Victor wins, we lose, and everything I've built, everything you've built, disappears. I don't care about what I've built. I care about you not getting killed. The words came out before he could stop them. Alara's expression softened, surprise flickering across her features. Damien, I mean it. He reached for her, his hands finding her waist. I know we started this as strategy, as survival, but somewhere in the past 3 weeks that changed. For me, at least. So I'm asking you, begging you, don't do this. Alara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. I appreciate that, more than you know. But I'm doing this because it's the only way forward, because I'm good at it, because someone has to. She placed her hands over his. And because I trust you to have my back if something goes wrong. Damien wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the penthouse and deal with Victor himself, the old way, with bullets and bodies. But he looked at her face, calm, certain, fearless, and realized she'd already made her decision. When? He asked. Tomorrow night. There's a council dinner at the estate. Victor will be occupied. Most of the guards will be focused on perimeter security for the guests. It's the best window we'll get. What do you need from me? Attend the dinner. Keep Victor talking. If anyone asks about me, say, I'm not feeling well. She pulled back, returning to her laptop. And trust that I know what I'm doing. Damien watched her work, anxiety coiling in his gut. He'd spent his whole life in control, dictating terms, eliminating variables. Now he was putting everything, including the woman he was rapidly falling for, into a plan he couldn't control. It was terrifying. It was also, he realized, the first time he'd ever really trusted anyone. Alara? Come back alive. She looked up and her smile was real, warm. I promise. But promises, Damien knew, were just words. And words couldn't stop bullets. She emerged. She was wearing her disguise. She emerged. She was wearing her disguise again. Shapeless dress, pulled back hair, glasses that hid her eyes. Remember, she said, checking her bag, keep Victor occupied. If the dinner runs short, extend it. Ask about expansion plans, territory disputes, anything that keeps him talking. I know. And don't look worried. You're supposed to be a man whose wife is homesick, not a man whose wife is committing espionage. Despite everything, Damien almost smiled. You're enjoying this. A little. She adjusted her glasses. I've spent 5 years pretending to be harmless. It's nice to finally use what I'm good at. You're good at a lot of things. Alara met his eyes, and something passed between them. Heat, understanding, fear wrapped in desire. When this is over, Damien started. When this is over, Alara interrupted, we'll have time to figure out what this is. But right now, I need you focused. Can you do that? Yes. Good. She kissed him quickly, a brush of lips that promised more later. See you in a few hours. Then she was gone, slipping out the service entrance while Damien headed to his car. Marcus was waiting, expression grim. You're sure about this? Marcus asked as they drove toward the estate. No, but she is. That woman is either brilliant or insane. Both, Damien said quietly. Definitely both. They arrived at the estate as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Other council members were arriving too. Expensive cars, expensive suits, expensive smiles that meant nothing. Damien moved through the greetings on autopilot, his mind on Alara. Victor greeted him at the door, all warmth and concern. Damien, I'm glad you came. How are you holding up? Managing. And Alara? I'd hope to see her tonight. She's not feeling well, sends her apologies. Victor's expression flickered, something too quick to identify. Nothing serious, I hope? Just a headache. She'll be fine. Good, good. Victor guided him inside. Come. We have much to discuss. The dinner was held in the formal dining room, 12 places set with crystal and silver. Damien took his assigned seat and endured 2 hours of political theater. Rossini talked about expansion into the docks. Chen proposed a new laundering operation through art galleries. Malik complained about the younger generation's lack of respect. And through it all, Damien kept Victor talking, asked questions, raised concerns, played the part of the humbled nephew seeking guidance. Meanwhile, somewhere in the estate, Alara was breaking into the most secure room in the building. Damien checked his watch. 8:45. She'd said she needed 90 minutes. He had to keep this going at least another hour. What about the Eastern Territories? He asked, interrupting a conversation about quarterly projections. I've heard rumors the Albanians are pushing in. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, too subtle for anyone else to notice. But Damien saw it. Suspicion. Calculation. "Where did you hear that?" Victor asked. "Around? Is it true?" "There have been some discussions, nothing formalized. Discussions that bypass the council?" The table went quiet. Rossini's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Chen's wineglass stopped mid-sip. Victor's smile remained, but it hardened at the edges. "Are you accusing me of something, nephew?" "I'm asking for transparency. If there are threats to our territories, the council should know." "The council knows everything it needs to know." Victor's tone was pleasant, dangerous. "Perhaps you should focus on your own situation before questioning how others handle theirs." It was a warning: back off or pay the price. Damien should have backed off. Instead, he leaned forward. "My situation exists because someone with access, with knowledge, with motive, decided to frame me and my wife. Until we find out who, everyone is suspect, even you." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop in the next room. Victor's mask finally cracked. The grandfatherly warmth disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal. "Be very careful, Damien." "Or what? You'll suspend me again? Strip away more authority?" Damien stood, his chair scraping back. "I've already lost everything you can take, so I'm done being careful." He walked out, leaving 12 shocked faces behind him. In the hallway, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm out. Meet me at the rendezvous." A relief flooded through him so suddenly his knees almost buckled. She was safe. She'd made it. He headed for the exit, but Victor's voice stopped him. "Damien." He turned. Victor stood in the doorway, backlit by the dining room chandelier. He looked older suddenly. Tired. "You're making a mistake," Victor said quietly. "Whatever Alara has told you, whatever she's convinced you to believe, it's poison. She's using you. The way you used me. I'm trying to protect you. From her. From yourself." "No." Damien's voice was steel. "You're trying to control me. There's a difference." He left before Victor could respond, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Marcus was waiting at the car, engine running. "Drive," Damien ordered, and they peeled away from the estate. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city. Alara was waiting in a corner booth, laptop open, looking perfectly calm despite having just committed what amounted to digital burglary. Damien slid into the booth across from her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. You?" "I just accused Victor of conspiracy in front of the entire council." Alara's eyebrows rose. "That wasn't the plan." "Plans change. Did you get it?" She turned the laptop toward him. The screen showed file after file of financial records, emails, transaction histories, years of data, all time-stamped, all authenticated. "Everything," she said. "Proof of the forgeries, the setup, the money trail leading back to Victor's personal accounts. Enough to bury him 10 times over." Damien stared at the screen, something like hope flickering in his chest. "This is really it?" "This is really it." Alara closed the laptop. "But we have a problem." "Of course we do." "Victor knows something's wrong. The way you described his reaction, he's suspicious, which means he'll move up his timeline." "Timeline for what?" Alara's expression was grim. "For eliminating us. He was probably planning to wait, let the council's distrust build, then arrange an accident. Clean, neat, no evidence. But now that we've spooked him, he'll accelerate. We have maybe 48 hours before he makes a move." Damien processed that. 2 days to live, if they didn't act first. "So what do? We call an emergency council session, tomorrow. We present the evidence before Victor can spin a counter-narrative. We force the council to choose sides. And if they choose him, then we run." Alara said it simply. "I have contingencies, safe houses, new identities, money and accounts he can't touch. We disappear and rebuild somewhere else." Damien looked at her, this woman who'd planned for every possibility, who'd built escape routes while everyone else built empires. She was offering him survival, a future, maybe even happiness, somewhere far from the violence and blood. It was tempting, but it was also surrender. "No," he said. "No? No running. I'm done letting Victor dictate my life. We take him down or we die trying. Alara studied his face. Then she smiled, fierce, proud. Okay, then we'd better make this count. She opened the laptop again and they started planning. Not for escape, for war. The emergency session was called for noon the next day. Damien sent the summons through official channels, citing new evidence in the embezzlement investigation. The council couldn't refuse without looking complicit. They gathered in the neutral meeting room downtown, away from Victor's estate. 12 people, all suspicious, all armed with their own agendas. Damien arrived with Alara on his arm. She'd shed the disguise entirely now. Hair down, minimal makeup, wearing a tailored suit that showed every curve she'd been hiding. The council members stared. Gentlemen, Ms. Torres, Damien nodded to the lone woman on the council. Thank you for coming. Rossini lit a cigar. This better be good, Damien. We're busy people. Oh, it is. Damien gestured to Alara. My wife has something to show you. Alara connected her laptop to the projector. Financial records filled the screen, the same ones from Victor's private server. For the past 6 months, she began, her voice clear and professional. Someone has been siphoning money from my husband's accounts and routing it through my charitable foundations. The council has seen this evidence. What you haven't seen is where the money actually went. She clicked to the next slide. A web of transactions appeared, flowing from Damien's accounts through various intermediaries before landing in a single offshore holding. These accounts belong to Victor Crown, Alara said. He orchestrated the entire scheme. He forged my husband's signatures, created false paper trails, and framed us both to justify removing Damien from power. The room erupted. That's a serious accusation, Chen said. That's a lie, Victor snapped, standing. These records are fabricated. They're authenticated. Alara pulled up another file. Time-stamped, encrypted, pulled directly from your private server. The one in your estate. The one you thought was secure. Victor's face went white. You broke into my home? I retrieved evidence of your conspiracy. There's a difference. This is insane, Rossini interjected. Victor, is this true? Victor's mask was fully cracked now. Gone was the grandfather, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. She's trying to manipulate you, he said, pointing at Alara. She's the thief. She's the one who... I have recordings, Alara interrupted. She played an audio file. Victor's voice filled the room, clear and damning. The council will blame Damien for the losses. They'll turn on him. And when they do, I step in. Clean, neat, no blood on my hands. The voice belonged to Victor. The words were his. And the date stamp showed the recording was made 3 weeks before Damien's suspension. The silence that followed was deafening. Malik spoke first. Victor, tell me this is a mistake. Victor looked around the table, seeing the shift, the doubt, the anger. His allies were evaporating like smoke. You're all fools if you believe her, he said, his voice rising. She's playing you. She's been playing all of us from the beginning. That whole innocent act, the quiet little wife, it was all a lie to get close to our operations, our secrets. Enough. Torres stood, her voice cutting through Victor's rant. I've heard enough. The evidence is clear. You orchestrated a conspiracy to remove your own nephew from power, you framed his wife, and you stole from family accounts. That's 3 counts of betrayal. Torres, I call for a vote. All in favor of removing Victor Crown from the council and stripping him of all authority and protection? 11 hands went up. Only Victor's stayed down. Motion passes. Torres looked at Victor with something like pity. You have 24 hours to settle your affairs and leave the city. If you're still here after that, you're no longer under council protection. Do you understand what that means? Victor understood. No protection meant open season. Every enemy he'd made over 40 years would come calling. He looked at Damien, and for the first time there was real fear in his eyes. You've made a terrible mistake, he said quietly. No, Damien replied. You did. The day you underestimated my wife. Security escorted Victor from the room. The council members sat in stunned silence. Finally, Rossini cleared his throat. Well, that was dramatic. He looked at Damien. I suppose this means you want your authority restored? I want more than that. Damien stood, Alara beside him. I want a seat on the council for my wife. Full voting rights, full access. She's earned it. That's unprecedented, Chen protested. So is what she just did. Damien's voice was firm. She saved this council from a coup. She deserves recognition. Torres smiled slightly. I second the motion. All in favor? The vote was closer this time, but it passed. 8-3. Alara Crown Vexley was now the youngest member of the council, and the most dangerous. They left the meeting together, stepping into the afternoon sun. Damien felt lighter than he had in weeks. Victor was gone. The threat was over. They'd won. But Alara's expression was troubled. What's wrong? He asked. Victor's still alive. He has 24 hours and a lifetime of connections. That's dangerous. He's beaten. The council stripped him of everything. Desperate men are unpredictable. She glanced at him. We need to be careful, at least until he's actually gone. Damien pulled her close, ignoring the watching eyes of guards and council members. I'm done being careful. We won, Alara. For once in my life, I actually won. She softened against him. We won. Together. Together, he agreed, and kissed her in the middle of the street, with the whole world watching. For the first time in weeks, the future felt possible. But that night, everything went wrong. They returned to the penthouse in the early evening. Marcus had ordered security doubled. Extra guards, new protocols, cameras on every entrance. But it wasn't enough. Damien was in the study, reviewing documents, when he heard glass shatter in the living room. He was moving before his brain caught up, gun in hand, racing toward the sound. Alara was on the floor, blood streaming from a cut on her temple. The window was broken. And standing in the center of the room, holding a gun, was Victor. He looked terrible. Suit disheveled, face haggard, eyes wild with desperation. You took everything from me, he said, the gun shaking in his hand. Damien raised his own weapon. Put it down, Victor. Everything. My reputation. My power. My legacy. Victor's voice cracked. And for what? For her? For the truth, Alara said, pushing herself up slowly. Blood dripped down her face, but her voice was steady. You did this to yourself. I was protecting the family. You were protecting yourself. Damien kept his gun trained on Victor's chest. You saw me as a threat and you tried to eliminate me. That's not protection. That's paranoia. Victor's laugh was broken, jagged. You have no idea what it takes to hold power. The sacrifices, the compromises. I did what was necessary. Necessary? Alara's voice was cold. You framed your own nephew. You tried to destroy both of us. That's not necessity. That's cruelty. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. She took a step forward, ignoring Damien's warning gesture. You're a small man who needed everyone around him to be smaller, and when we refused to shrink, you tried to crush us. Victor's gun swung toward her. Shut up. No. Another step. You want to shoot me? Go ahead, but it won't change anything. You've already lost. Alara, Damien started, but she kept walking, closing the distance between herself and Victor with each word. You can kill me right now. You can kill both of us. But the council knows the truth. Your allies have abandoned you. Your legacy is ash. She stopped 3 feet from the barrel of his gun. You have nothing left, and shooting me won't change that. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Victor's hand began to shake. The gun wavered, and something in his expression crumbled. I just wanted to matter, he whispered. You did matter, Alara said quietly. But you chose fear over trust, control over connection. And that's why you're here, alone, with a gun in your hand and nowhere left to go. The gun dropped. Victor collapsed into a chair, decades of bravado evaporating in seconds. Damien kept his weapon raised, but his finger eased off the trigger. What happens now? Victor asked hollowly. Now? Damien lowered his gun. Now you leave. You take the council's mercy and you disappear. Because if you ever come back, if you ever threaten her again, I will kill you. Council protection or not. Do you understand? Victor nodded, defeated. Marcus and 2 guards appeared in the doorway. They'd been waiting outside, ready to intervene. Damien gestured to Victor. Escort him out. Make sure he reaches the city limits. After that, he's not our problem. They took Victor away. He didn't resist, didn't even look back. And then it was just Damien and Alara standing in the wreckage of the living room. Damien crossed to her, gently touching the cut on her temple. You're bleeding. It's just a scratch. You walked toward a loaded gun. I knew he wouldn't shoot. How could you possibly know that? Alara met his eyes. Because broken people don't want to hurt others. They want to be seen. And I saw him. Damien pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. She'd risked everything, walked into death with nothing but words and conviction. She was insane, brilliant, terrifying, and he loved her. The realization hit him like a freight train, not attraction, not partnership, love, real, deep, complicated love. Don't ever do that again, he said into her hair. Do what? Scare me like that. Alara pulled back just enough to see his face. What she saw there made her breath catch. Damien, I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first night you dropped that file on my table. Maybe when you kissed me in this room. Maybe every moment in between. But I love you, and I can't lose you. Alara's eyes were bright. You're not going to lose me. Promise me. I promise. She cupped his face in her hands. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. Partners, equals. Always. Always, he repeated. She kissed him then, deep and claiming, tasting like blood and victory and tomorrow. Damien lifted her, carrying her toward the bedroom, and for once, the future didn't feel like a cage. It felt like freedom. They woke tangled together in the early morning light, the city still dark below them. Damien had barely slept, too aware of Alara's breathing, the warmth of her skin against his, the impossible reality that she was here, alive, his. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Victor's gun pointed at her head, saw her walking forward with that terrible calm, and his heart seized all over again. Stop thinking so loud, Alara murmured against his chest. I can practically hear your mind racing. I could have lost you last night, but you didn't. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. The cut on her temple had been cleaned and bandaged, a small white patch against her skin. I'm right here. You walked toward a loaded gun. I walked toward a broken man holding a gun. There's a difference. She traced patterns on his chest, idle and intimate. Victor was never going to shoot me. He wanted validation, understanding, someone to see him as more than the monster he'd become. You're too forgiving. I'm pragmatic. Dead martyrs don't win wars. She kissed him softly. Besides, I had you as backup. I knew you wouldn't let anything happen to me. Damien pulled her closer, needing the solid weight of her, the proof that she was real and whole and safe. Don't make me choose between letting you be reckless and keeping you alive. I'll lock you in this penthouse every time. You could try. Her smile was wicked, but I'm very good at escaping. I know. That's what terrifies me. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in sheets and silence, until the sun finally broke over the skyline and reality came flooding back. There was work to do. Victor might be gone, but his absence left a vacuum that needed filling, territory to secure, alliances to rebuild. A council that still looked at Alara like she was either a miracle or a threat, depending on who was watching. Alara was the first to move, sliding out of bed and pulling on one of Damien's shirts. It fell to mid-thigh, and he found himself distracted by the sight of her padding barefoot to the window. We need to move quickly, she said, staring out at the city. Victor's operations won't stay dormant long. His lieutenants will either scatter or try to claim power for themselves. Either way, it creates instability. Let them scatter. We'll absorb what's useful and burn the rest. That's short-term thinking. She turned to face him. If we just take what we want, we look like conquerors. The council will see us as a threat. But if we stabilize Victor's territories, protect his people, show mercy where he showed cruelty, we build loyalty. Real loyalty. Not the kind enforced by fear. Damien sat up, sheets pooling around his waist. You want to help the people who served the man who tried to kill us? I want to help the people who had no choice but to serve him. There's a difference. Alara moved back to the bed, kneeling on the mattress in front of him. Most of Victor's organization wasn't loyal to him personally. They were loyal to survival, to paychecks and protection. Give them a better option and they'll come to us. And the ones who were loyal to Victor, the true believers? Those we handle differently. Her expression hardened. We offer them one chance to walk away. If they take it, fine. If they don't, we eliminate the threat. Exactly. She kissed him, a quick brush of lips. See? We think alike. Scary thought. Terrifying, she agreed and smiled. They spent the next hour planning, mapping out Victor's former territories and identifying key players. Marcus joined them, bringing coffee and intelligence reports. Apparently, word of Victor's exile had spread fast. 3 of his lieutenants had already reached out, requesting meetings. 2 others had vanished into the wind. The ones who ran are either smart or guilty, Marcus observed. Either way, they're not immediate problems. But these 3, he tapped the files. They're testing the waters, seeing if you're going to be like Victor or something different. Set up the meetings, Damien said. Neutral locations. And Marcus? Make sure our people are nearby, just in case. Already done. Alara was studying one of the files, frowning. This one, Constantine. He ran Victor's Eastern operations, mostly gambling and protection rackets. What about him? He has a daughter, 8 years old, leukemia. Victor was covering the medical bills in exchange for loyalty. She looked up. If we take over those territories, we need to make sure that arrangement continues. Damien blinked. You want to pay for a mobster's daughter's cancer treatment? I want to show that we're not Victor, that we value life, even the lives of people who work for us. It's strategic compassion. It's going to cost a fortune. So will the alternative. If we cut off support, Constantine either goes bankrupt trying to save his daughter, or he turns desperate and becomes a liability. But if we continue the payments, even increase them, show him we're invested in his family's well-being, we earn genuine loyalty, the kind that doesn't break under pressure. Marcus was nodding slowly. She's right. And word will spread. People will know you're not like Victor, that you actually give a damn. Damien looked between them, then at the file. 8 years old, leukemia. A little girl who had no say in her father's choices, caught in a world that would chew her up without blinking. He thought about the empire he'd inherited, the violence, the casual cruelty, the way power had always meant stepping on anyone weaker. All right, he said, we continue the medical support, full coverage, whatever she needs. And Marcus? Find out if anyone else in Victor's organization has similar situations. Family members who need help. We make sure they're taken care of. That's a lot of exposure, Marcus warned. People will take advantage. Let them try. Damien's voice was firm. We'll vet each case, but if someone legitimately needs help, we provide it. That's the new policy. Alara's hand found his under the table, squeezing gently. When he looked at her, her eyes were bright with something he couldn't name. Pride, maybe, or hope. Okay, Marcus said slowly. I'll put together a list. But boss, this is going to fundamentally change how we operate. Good, Damien said. It's about time. After Marcus left, Alara pulled Damien into a kiss that tasted like gratitude and promise. Thank you, she whispered against his lips. For what? For choosing to be better. For choosing this. She gestured vaguely at the files, the city beyond the windows, the future they were building. It would have been easier to just do things the old way. Nothing about you is easy, Damien said, but he was smiling. Why should this be any different? Fair point. They were still laughing when Damien's phone rang. The council. Emergency meeting in 2 hours. The laughter died. What now? Alara asked. Damien checked the message details. Rossini called it. No details, just a summons. That's not good? No, it's not. They dressed quickly, Alara shedding Damien's shirt for a sharp black suit that made her look like she could buy and sell governments, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry, an expression that could cut glass. She looked every inch the council member she'd become. Damien found himself staring. What? She asked, checking her reflection. Nothing. You're just formidable. I'm about to walk into a room full of people who might be planning to betray us. Formidable is the minimum requirement. She adjusted her cufflinks. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. They arrived at the meeting room to find the entire council already assembled. That was the first warning sign. Council members were never early. They made other people wait as a power play. But today, all 11 of them were seated, faces grave, and the atmosphere in the room could have frozen nitrogen. Rossini stood as they entered. Damien, Ilara, thank you for coming. We didn't have much choice, Damien replied, taking his seat. Ilara sat beside him, her face perfectly neutral. No, I suppose not. Rossini remained standing. We have a situation, one that affects all of us. Victor is dead. The words landed like stones. Damien felt Ilara go still beside him. How? Damien asked carefully. He was found this morning, 40 miles outside the city. Single gunshot to the head. Professional execution. Rossini's eyes were flat. He never made it to exile. Silence filled the room. Damien's mind raced. Victor was supposed to have 24 hours to leave. They'd given him that mercy, that chance to disappear and live out his days in obscurity. But someone had decided that wasn't punishment enough. Do we know who did it? Torres asked. No, but there are theories. Rossini looked directly at Damien. You had motive, you had opportunity, and you certainly had reason to want him dead. I didn't kill him, Damien said flatly. Can you prove that? Can you prove I did? The tension ratcheted up another notch. Chen cleared his throat. This isn't an accusation, Damien. It's a question. Victor's death changes things. If it looks like you executed him after the council granted exile, it undermines our authority, makes us look weak. I understand the politics, but I didn't kill Victor. I gave him mercy and someone else decided he didn't deserve it. Then who? Malik demanded. Who else wanted him dead badly enough to risk council displeasure? Damien had about a dozen answers to that question. Victor had made enemies like other people made acquaintances, but saying so would sound like deflection. Ilara spoke for the first time, her voice calm and clear. Victor had enemies in every territory. The Volkovs, the Albanians, Rossini's people in the north, even some of his own lieutenants had reason to want him gone. She looked around the table. Pointing fingers at my husband is convenient, but it's not evidence. No one is pointing fingers, Rossini said smoothly. We're simply establishing facts. Then here's a fact. Ilara leaned forward. Victor tried to kill us both less than 24 hours ago. He broke into our home, held us at gunpoint, and was only stopped because we showed him mercy. If we wanted him dead, we could have justified it as self-defense, and no one here would have blinked. But you didn't, Chen observed. No, we didn't, because despite everything he did, we chose to honor the council's decision. Her eyes were hard. So unless you have actual evidence that we were involved, I suggest we focus on finding who really killed him and why. Torres nodded slowly. Agreed. This feels like a distraction. Someone wanted Victor dead and wanted it to look like Damien's revenge. That serves someone's agenda, and it's not ours. Or, Rossini said quietly, it serves exactly the person claiming innocence. Enough. Torres slapped her hand on the table. Unless you have proof, Rossini, this speculation is useless. We vote. All in favor of launching a formal investigation into Victor's death? 8 hands went up. Damien and Ilara abstained, as did Rossini. Motion passes. I'll oversee the investigation personally. Torres looked at Damien. You're not under suspicion officially, but I'd appreciate your cooperation. Of course. Good. Meeting adjourned. People filed out slowly, conversations happening in low tones. Damien and Ilara waited until the room was empty before speaking. Someone set us up, Ilara said quietly. Obviously. The question is who? And why now? Victor was already beaten. Killing him accomplishes nothing except making us look guilty. Damien thought about it, turning pieces over in his mind. Unless that's the point, someone wants the council divided, wants them questioning our loyalty. Rossini? Maybe. Or someone using Rossini's suspicion as cover. Damien stood, pacing. We need to find out who actually killed Victor, fast, before this narrative gets away from us. Ilara pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. I'll reach out to my contacts. Someone saw something. They always do. Be careful. If someone's trying to frame us, they might be watching to see how we react. I'm always careful. She looked up, and despite everything, she smiled. Well, mostly. They left the meeting room together, and Damien couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something bigger than Victor's death. Some larger game with players they hadn't identified yet. In the car, Marcus was waiting with more bad news. Constantine is dead. Damien's head snapped up. What? Found in his office an hour ago. Same as Victor. Single shot. Professional. And boss? His daughter's medical support account was emptied 3 days ago. Every penny. Gone. Alara's face went pale. No, we just decided to continue that support. Someone beat us to it, and not in a good way. Marcus handed over a tablet. This was left at the scene. The screen showed a single message, typed on Constantine's own computer. She dies because you chose wrong. Damien felt ice flood his veins. The daughter, where is she? Hospital. She's safe for now, but without the money for treatment. Marcus didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Get a team there, full security, and transfer funds to cover her care. Do it now. On it? Marcus made the call, speaking rapidly into his phone. Alara was staring at the message, her expression frozen. This is my fault, she whispered. No. I suggested using medical support as leverage. I made Constantine a target because someone knew we'd try to help him. Her voice cracked. That little girl is dying because of me. Damien grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me. We didn't kill Constantine. We didn't empty that account. Someone else did. And they're trying to make us feel exactly what you're feeling right now. Guilt. Fear. Paralysis. Then it's working. Then we fight back. He pulled her close, his voice fierce against her hair. We save that little girl. We find out who's doing this, and we make them regret ever thinking they could use innocent people as weapons against us. Alara nodded against his chest, and when she pulled back, the grief in her eyes had hardened into something colder, more dangerous. I need access to Constantine's financial records, all of them. I'll get them. And I need to know everyone who knew about our plans, everyone we discussed the medical support with. Alara, someone leaked our strategy before we could even implement it. That means someone close to us is feeding information to whoever's behind this. Her jaw set. We have a traitor, Damien, and I'm going to find them. She was right, and Damien hated it, because if they had a traitor in their inner circle, it meant they couldn't trust anyone. Not fully. Not even people they'd relied on for years. The phone rang. Marcus answered, listened, his expression darkening. Boss, there's been another hit. 2 more of Victor's former lieutenants, both dead. Both had the same message left behind. Damien felt the world tilt. This wasn't just about framing them anymore. Someone was systematically eliminating everyone connected to Victor's organization, creating chaos, destroying potential allies, and making sure all evidence pointed back to Damien and Alara. How many lieutenants are left? He asked. 3. And they've all gone dark, not answering calls, not at their usual locations. They're running, Alara said. They think we're cleaning house. We need to find them before whoever's actually doing this does. Damien grabbed his coat. Marcus, put out the word. We're offering protection to anyone from Victor's organization who comes in voluntarily. No questions, no consequences. They just have to trust us. That's a big ask, considering people are dying. It's the only play we have. If we don't stop this bleeding, we'll have a full-scale war on our hands. They spent the next 6 hours racing across the city, trying to track down the remaining lieutenants. One was found dead in a safe house, the same execution style. Another had fled to a girlfriend's apartment, which they raided only to find him gone, and the girlfriend terrified into silence. The third, a woman named Irina who'd run Victor's smuggling operations, finally made contact around midnight. She agreed to meet at a dockside warehouse, neutral ground, with the understanding that she could leave if she felt threatened. Damien and Alara arrived with Marcus and 4 guards. The warehouse was dark, smelling of salt water and old fish. Irina was already there, standing in a pool of light from a single overhead bulb, hands visible, no weapons drawn. She was younger than Damien expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and scars on her knuckles that said she'd fought her way up. You're really offering protection? she asked without preamble. Yes. Full immunity, safe location, and help getting out if you want it. Damien stopped 10 feet away. All we ask is information. Information about what? About who's killing Victor's people. About who would want to frame us for it. Irina laughed, bitter and sharp. You mean besides everyone with a grudge against Victor? That's a long list. We know, but this is coordinated, professional, someone with resources and intelligence. Alara stepped forward. Did Victor have any enemies who would have the capability to do this? Victor had nothing but enemies. The question is which one finally grew the balls to move against him. Think, Alara pressed. In the weeks before the council stripped him of power, did he seem worried? Did he mention any threats? Irina was quiet for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, there was one thing. A meeting, maybe 3 weeks ago. Victor was on the phone arguing with someone. I couldn't hear details, but he was scared. Really scared. He kept saying something about the old contract and you can't enforce this anymore. Damien and Alara exchanged looks. Did you hear a name? Damien asked. No. But after the call, Victor told me to pull all our operations back from the southern docks. Said that territory wasn't worth the trouble anymore. The southern docks. That was neutral ground, officially. No single family controlled it, by mutual agreement dating back decades. Who has interests in the southern docks? Alara asked. Everyone and no one. It's a free zone. Anyone can operate there as long as they pay the tax. Irina shrugged. The tax goes to whoever originally negotiated the treaty, some old-timer who retired years ago. Damien's mind clicked pieces into place. An old contract, a retired power player, territory that suddenly became dangerous. Who negotiated the Southern Docks Treaty? He asked quietly. Irina frowned. I don't know the name. It was before my time. But I heard it was one of the original council founders, someone who stepped back when... She never finished the sentence. The shot came from darkness, punching through her chest before any of them could react. Irina dropped, blood spreading beneath her, eyes wide with shock. Down! Marcus roared, and everyone scattered. More shots came, suppressed fire from multiple angles. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Damien grabbed Alara, pulling her behind a shipping container as bullets pinged off metal. His guards returned fire, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness. We need to move! Marcus shouted. We're surrounded! Damien looked at Alara, saw her face set in grim determination, and knew she was thinking the same thing he was. This was a trap. Irina had been bait, and they'd walked right into it. East exit, Damien called. Go, go! They ran, bullets chasing them, until they burst out into the night air. Cars screeched up, their cars, and they piled in. Marcus floored it, tires smoking as they peeled away from the warehouse. Behind them, the shooting stopped. In the back seat, Damien held Alara, both of them breathing hard, adrenaline crashing through their systems. They knew we'd come, Alara said, voice shaking. They knew exactly how we'd respond. Because someone told them. Damien's voice was cold. Someone on our side is feeding them our every move. Marcus, it's not Marcus, Damien said with certainty. He's had a dozen chances to kill me if he wanted. It's someone else, someone with access to our plans. Alara pulled out her phone, hands trembling slightly as she pulled up files. I'm going to review everyone who's had access to our communications over the past month. Every guard, every associate, every... She stopped. Her face went white. What? Damien demanded. The council meeting, when Rossini asked about Victor's death. She looked up, eyes wide with realization. He knew details that weren't public yet. He knew about the execution style, the timing, information that hadn't been released. He could have gotten that from Torres. She's leading the investigation. Or he already knew because he ordered the hit. Alara's fingers flew across her phone. Give me a minute, I need to check something. Damien waited, watching the city fly past outside the window, his mind racing through possibilities. Rossini had never liked him, had always seen him as Victor's puppet rather than a real power player. But would he go this far? Would he orchestrate murders and frame Damien just to consolidate control? Got it, Alara breathed. Rossini owns a shipping company that operates out of the southern docks. Has for 20 years. And 3 weeks ago, Victor's operations pulled out of that territory. Meaning Victor's withdrawal gave Rossini a monopoly. Exactly. And if Victor had leverage over that territory, an old contract that let him operate there despite Rossini's claims, then removing Victor would eliminate the only person who could challenge Rossini's control. But why kill all of Victor's lieutenants? Why frame us? Because he's not just taking territory. He's eliminating competition entirely. Victor's people could rebuild, could challenge him later. But if they're all dead and we take the blame, Rossini gets everything. The southern docks, Victor's remaining operations, and a council seat you'll be too busy defending yourself to use effectively. It was elegant, brutal, and exactly the kind of long-game strategy that someone like Rossini would play. "We need proof," Damien said. "We need to survive long enough to get proof." Alara looked at him, and fear flickered in her eyes for the first time since he'd known her. "Damien, if Rossini is behind this, he has resources we can't match. Money, connections, assassins who can get to us anywhere. Then we go to ground. We disappear until we can prove what he's done." "Run away?" "Strategically retreat." Damien cupped her face. "You said it yourself. Dead martyrs don't win wars. We need time to gather evidence, to build a case, and we can't do that if we're dead." Alara closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I have a place. Remote. No one knows about it except me." "Then that's where we go." She gave Marcus the address, and they drove through the night, leaving the city behind. Damien watched the lights fade in the rearview mirror and felt something loosen in his chest. For weeks they'd been fighting, scrambling, reacting to one crisis after another. Maybe it was time to stop reacting. Maybe it was time to plan. 3 hours later, they pulled up to a cabin on a lake so remote it didn't appear on most maps. Marcus did a security sweep while Damien and Alara went inside. It was simple. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, wood-burning stove, but it was hidden, safe. "I bought this 5 years ago," Alara explained, lighting the stove. "With money Victor didn't know I had. I always knew I might need a place to disappear." "You planned for this." "I planned for everything." She turned to him, and in the firelight, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "I just never thought I'd be running with someone else." Damien crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "We're not running, we're regrouping." Semantics. Strategy. She laughed, but it turned into something else. A sob, maybe, or exhaustion finally breaking through. Damien held her while she shook, absorbing the fear and adrenaline and grief she'd been holding back for hours. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming. Should have planned better. Should have—" "Stop." Damien tilted her face up. "You're brilliant. You're the only reason we're still alive. This isn't your fault." "Irina died because of me. Irina died because Rossini is a monster. Don't take that on yourself." Alara nodded, but Damien could see the guilt in her eyes, the weight of it. She'd built her whole life on being 3 steps ahead, on never being surprised, and Rossini had blindsided her. "We're going to make him pay," Damien promised. "For Irina, for Constantine, for every person he's hurt, I swear to you." "How? We have no proof, no allies, no—" "We have each other." Damien kissed her softly. "And we're a lot more dangerous together than apart." She kissed him back, desperate and seeking, and they stumbled toward the bedroom. Outside, the lake was silent. Inside, for a few hours at least, they could forget the world and just be. 2 people against an empire. 2 people who refused to break. 2 people who were about to prove that love could be just as dangerous as power. Maybe more. Morning broke cold and clear over the lake, light slanting through the cabin windows and painting everything gold. Damien woke with Alara curled against him, her breathing steady and deep, and for a moment he let himself pretend they were just 2 people in love, hiding away from the world for all the right reasons. Then reality crashed back. Rossini. The murders. The trap they'd barely escaped. The empire crumbling while they hid in the woods like fugitives. Alara stirred, her eyes opening slowly. "What time is it?" "Early, maybe 6. She sat up, pushing hair from her face, and Damien watched the transformation happen in real time. The softness of sleep hardening into focus. The vulnerable woman disappearing behind the strategist. "We need to call Marcus," she said. "Find out what's happened since we left." "Already did, while you were sleeping." Damien handed her his phone. 3 more bodies, all Victor's people. And Rossini called an emergency council session for this afternoon. He's moving to have us declared fugitives. Alara's jaw tightened as she read the messages. He's accelerating, trying to force a resolution before we can mount a defense. Which means we're running out of time. No. She handed the phone back, her eyes sharp. It means he's running out of time. If he had solid evidence against us, he wouldn't need to rush. He'd let the investigation play out. The fact that he's pushing for immediate action means he's worried we'll find something, or that we'll disappear completely. That too. Alara climbed out of bed, pulling on clothes with efficient movements. But here's what Rossini doesn't know. I've been building a case against him for 3 years. Damien stared at her. What? I told you, I planned for everything. That includes knowing who the real threats were. She pulled out her laptop from a hidden compartment in her bag. Rossini has been running side operations for years. Money laundering through his shipping company, smuggling, even human trafficking. I've been documenting all of it, waiting for the right moment to use it. And you didn't think to mention this before? I was saving it for when we needed leverage. This qualifies. She opened the laptop, fingers flying across the keys. The problem is most of the evidence is digital. Financial records, shipping manifests, encrypted communications. We need to get it to the council in a way they can't ignore or dismiss. And we need to do it before the emergency session. Exactly. Alara pulled up a file, her expression grim. But there's one piece of physical evidence that would seal the case. Rossini keeps a ledger. Old school, handwritten, documenting every illegal transaction he's made for the past 20 years. It's his insurance policy, proof against everyone he's ever worked with, so they can't betray him without exposing themselves. Where is it? His office, in a safe behind a painting of his grandfather. Biometric lock, but I have a workaround. She looked up. I can get it, but it means going back to the city, walking right into Rossini's territory while he's actively hunting us. Then we don't have a choice. Damien stood, decision made. We go back. We get the ledger. We bring Rossini down before he destroys us. It's suicide. It's the only move that wins. He pulled her up, holding her gaze. You said it yourself. Dead martyrs don't win wars, but smart fighters who take calculated risks, they change everything. Alara searched his face, looking for doubt. Finding none, she nodded slowly. All right, but we do this my way. Careful, precise, no heroics. I thought walking toward loaded guns wasn't heroic. That was strategy. This is different. She kissed him, quick and fierce. This is survival, and I need you to survive, Damien. I need us both to make it out. We will, he promised. Together. They called Marcus, who'd been waiting for orders. Within an hour, he arrived at the cabin with fresh clothes, weapons, and a plan he'd been working on all night. Rossini's office building has security, but it's designed to keep people out, not in, Marcus explained, spreading blueprints across the cabin's small table. If we can get you inside, you'll have maybe 15 minutes before anyone realizes you're there. How do we get inside? Alara asked. Delivery entrance. I've got a contact who drives for the catering company that services the building. He owes me a favor. He can get you in the loading dock, but after that, you're on your own. What about cameras? I can loop the feeds for 10 minutes. After that, someone will notice. So you need to be fast. Alara studied the blueprints, her finger tracing routes. Rossini's office is on the 20th floor. Elevators will be monitored. We'll need to take the stairs. 20 flights? Damien asked. 19. The loading dock enters on the 2nd floor. She looked at Marcus. Can you create a distraction? Something that pulls security away from the 20th floor? Fire alarm on the 10th floor requires evacuation protocols, pulls half the guards down, should give you a clear path. Should? Marcus met her gaze evenly. There are no guarantees, but it's the best shot you've got. Damien looked at Alara, saw her running calculations behind her eyes. Risk versus reward. Probability versus desperation. Finally, she nodded. We do it. Tonight, during the council session, Rossini will be occupied, his attention split. That's our window. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Marcus procured security badges, duplicate keys, everything they'd need to move through the building undetected. Alara memorized guard rotations, camera positions, escape routes. Damien cleaned his gun and tried not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. As evening approached, they drove back to the city in silence. The skyline appeared on the horizon like a promise or a threat, depending on how you looked at it. Damien felt both. "Whatever happens," Alara said quietly, "I need you to know something. Don't say goodbye. I'm not. I'm saying thank you." She took his hand. "For seeing me, for trusting me, for choosing to be better instead of just being powerful. You didn't have to do any of that." "Yes, I did. Because you made me want to." Damien lifted her hand, kissing her knuckles. "And when this is over, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I was worth the risk you took on me." "You already have," she whispered. They arrived at the building at 7:15. The council session started at 7:30, which meant Rossini would be leaving any minute. Marcus waited in the delivery van while Damien and Alara changed into catering uniforms. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "No," Alara said, "but let's go anyway." They climbed into the back of the van, surrounded by food trays and equipment. The driver, Marcus's contact, a man who asked no questions and expected no answers, pulled up to the loading dock. Security checked his credentials, glanced into the back where Damien and Alara crouched behind catering boxes, and waved them through. Once inside, they slipped away from the van and into the service corridors. The building was all concrete and fluorescent lights here, utilitarian and cold. They moved quickly, heading for the stairwell. "Fire alarm goes off in 5 minutes, Marcus said through their earpieces. "That's your signal." They climbed. 19 floors of stairs, taking them 2 at a time, breathing hard but not stopping. By the 15th floor, Damien's legs were burning. By the 17th, Alara was breathing hard. But they kept moving. At the 19th floor landing, they paused. Through the door, they could hear voices, guards talking casually about sports and weekend plans. "How many?" Damien whispered. Alara pressed her ear to the door. 2, maybe 3. Then the fire alarm screamed. Immediately, the voices shifted. Footsteps pounded past, heading for the stairs. Damien and Alara pressed against the wall as guards rushed down, too focused on the emergency to notice 2 people in catering uniforms hiding in the shadows. When the stairwell was clear, they slipped through the door onto the 20th floor. Rossini's office was at the end of the hall, past administrative desks and conference rooms. The floor was mostly empty, everyone either at the council session or dealing with the fire alarm. They moved fast, checking corners, until they reached the heavy oak door with Rossini's name on it. Alara pulled out a key card Marcus had provided. It shouldn't work. Rossini's office required his personal authorization, but Marcus had cloned the signal from Rossini's actual card. The lock clicked green. They were inside. The office was exactly what Damien expected. Dark wood, expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And on the wall, a painting of a stern-looking old man who must have been Rossini's grandfather. Alara went straight to it, lifting it from the wall to reveal a safe. Biometric scanner, keypad, the works. "Can you open it?" Damien asked, watching the door. "Give me 60 seconds. She pulled out a small device, pressing it against the scanner. Numbers flickered on its screen. Marcus hacked Rossini's biometrics from security footage. "If this works..." The safe beeped and clicked open. Inside was the ledger, leather-bound, thick, filled with decades of handwritten records. Alara grabbed it, her hands shaking slightly. "We've got it. Let's go." They turned toward the door and froze. Rossini stood in the entrance, gun drawn, his face calm and cold. "I wondered if you'd be this predictable," he said, "breaking into my office during the council session. It's almost insulting how transparent you are." Damien's hand moved toward his weapon, but Rossini shook his head. "Don't! I have 8 men in the hallway. You draw that gun, and you'll be dead before you clear the holster." "The council session," Alara started, "was moved to tomorrow. I sent out the change an hour ago, to everyone except you." Rossini smiled. "I knew you'd try something desperate, so I set a trap, and you walked right into it." Damien felt his heart hammering. They'd been so careful, so precise, and still, Rossini had outplayed them. "What now?" he asked. "Now? You give me that ledger, and I decide whether to kill you here or make it look like an accident later. If you kill us, the council will know it was you. Alara said, voice steady despite the gun pointed at her chest. Will they? I have evidence you broke into my office, stole confidential documents, attacked me when I discovered you. Rossini gestured with the gun. It's self-defense. Tragic, but justified. Except we sent copies of everything to Torres, Alara lied smoothly. Every piece of evidence we have on you. If we don't check in within the hour, she gets it all. Rossini's expression flickered. Doubt, just for a second. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to risk it? Alara took a step forward. Here's what's really going to happen. We're walking out of here with this ledger. You're going to let us go. And tomorrow, at the real council session, we're going to present evidence of every crime you've committed for the past 20 years. And why would I let you do that? Because if you kill us, Torres gets the evidence anyway. At least this way you have a chance to run, to disappear before the council tears you apart. She took another step. Or you can shoot us and spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder, waiting for the council's judgment. For a long moment, nobody moved. Damien watched Rossini's face, saw him calculating odds, weighing options. The gun stayed level, pointed at Alara's heart. Then, from the hallway, a voice called out. Rossini, we've got a problem. Rossini's attention flickered toward the door. Just for a second, it was enough. Damien lunged, grabbing Rossini's gun arm and forcing it up. The shot went wild, punching through the ceiling. They crashed into the desk, struggling for control of the weapon. Alara grabbed the ledger and ran for the door. Go! Damien shouted, slamming Rossini's hand against the desk until the gun fell. Get out! But Alara didn't run. She turned back and Damien saw her make a decision. Saw her choose him over safety, over strategy, over every survival instinct she'd honed for 27 years. She grabbed a paperweight from the desk and brought it down on Rossini's head. He dropped, unconscious. What happened to no heroics? Damien gasped. What happened to doing things my way? She grabbed his hand. Now move! They ran. Out into the hallway where guards were already responding to the gunshot. Down the service corridor as shouts erupted behind them. Into the stairwell, taking stairs 3 at a time, the ledger clutched against Alara's chest. At the 10th floor, they burst through the exit into the chaos of the fire alarm evacuation. People streamed past, and they blended into the crowd, just 2 more bodies heading for the exits. Outside, Marcus was waiting with the van. They jumped in, and he peeled away from the building as police cars screamed toward it. Did you get it? Marcus asked. Alara held up the ledger, and despite everything, despite the fear and the adrenaline and the near-death experience, she was smiling. We got it. Damien started laughing. He couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, the impossible victory, the fact that they were alive and together and holding the key to destroying Rossini. Alara joined in, and soon they were both laughing so hard they could barely breathe. You're both insane, Marcus muttered, but he was smiling too. They drove to Torres's house. She answered the door in a bathrobe, gun in hand, her expression shifting from annoyance to shock when she saw them. What the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be in hiding. We brought you something, Alara said, handing over the ledger. Torres opened it, her eyes widening as she flipped through pages. Is this everything? 20 years of Rossini's operations. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to put him away for life and implicate half the people he's worked with. Alara's voice was steady. We need you to call an emergency council session tomorrow, before Rossini can spin what happened tonight. Torres looked between them, then back at the ledger. This is going to destroy the council. Half these names are sitting members. Then it's time for new blood, Damien said. The old ways are done, Torres. It's time to build something better. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Tomorrow, noon. I'll make sure everyone is there. She looked at Alara. You're going to make enemies doing this. I already have enemies. At least these ones will be out in the open. Torres almost smiled. You're either very brave or very stupid. Both, Alara said. Definitely both. They left Torres's house and drove to a safe location Marcus had prepared. A hotel, nothing fancy, but clean and anonymous. Marcus took the first watch while Damien and Alara collapsed onto the bed. We did it, Alara whispered, staring at the ceiling. We're not done yet. Tomorrow we finish it. But tonight? She turned to look at him. Tonight we survived. That's enough. Damien pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. I love you. I know. She kissed him softly. I love you too, even though you're terrible at following plans. You're terrible at staying out of danger. We're a perfect match. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in weeks, Damien slept without nightmares. The council convened at noon in the main chamber, every member present, the air thick with tension. Rossini sat at his usual place, a bandage on his temple, his expression carefully neutral. He didn't look at Damien or Alara. Torres called the session to order and immediately turned the floor over to Alara. She stood, the ledger in her hands, and began to speak. For 2 hours, she walked the council through Rossini's crimes. The smuggling operations, the money laundering, the murders he'd ordered, including Victor and all his lieutenants. She presented documentation, recordings, financial records, evidence so overwhelming that even Rossini's closest allies began to shift away from him. When she finished, the room was silent. Rossini stood slowly. These are lies. Fabrications designed to... They're your own records, Torres interrupted. Your handwriting, your seal, there's no denying it. Then I was framed. The ledger was stolen, altered. The ledger matches financial records pulled from your personal accounts. We've already verified it. Torres looked around the table. The evidence is conclusive. Rossini has been operating outside council authority for decades. He murdered Victor to prevent exposure. He killed Victor's people to eliminate witnesses, and he attempted to frame Damien and Alara to consolidate his own power. You can't prove intent, we can prove everything. Alara's voice was cold. And you know it. The only question now is whether you want to face council justice or legal justice. Rossini's face went white. Council justice meant exile at best, execution at worst. Legal justice meant trials, publicity, and prison. I call for a vote, Torres said. All in favor of stripping Rossini of all authority, assets, and council protection? Every hand went up. Even Rossini's former allies. Motion passes. Torres stood. Antonio Rossini, you are hereby removed from this council and exiled from all territories under our control. You have 48 hours to leave. After that, you are no longer protected. Do you understand? Rossini looked around the table at faces that had once smiled at him, worked with him, trusted him. Now they looked at him with disgust or indifference. He stood, straightening his jacket with as much dignity as he could muster. You've made a mistake, he said quietly. All of you. This council was built on strength, on the understanding that power is the only truth. You're destroying that by listening to them. He pointed at Damien and Alara. Their weakness pretending to be evolution, and it will cost you everything. Get out, Damien said simply. Rossini left. And with him went the last remnant of the old guard, the old ways, the old world that had ruled through fear and violence. After he was gone, Torres looked at Damien and Alara. What now? Now we rebuild, Damien said, the right way, with transparency, with accountability, with rules that actually protect people instead of just protecting power. That's a tall order. Good thing we have time, Alara smiled, and each other. The council spent the next month in transition. 3 members who'd been implicated in Rossini's schemes stepped down voluntarily. New faces were brought in, younger people who understood that the world was changing and they needed to change with it. Damien and Alara led the transformation. They established oversight committees, financial transparency requirements, and humanitarian initiatives funded by the empire's legitimate businesses. It wasn't perfect. There was still violence, still crime, still gray areas that no amount of reform could eliminate. But it was better. And better was a start. Constantine's daughter received the treatment she needed, paid for by a foundation Alara established in Irina's name. She went into remission 3 months later. Her father sent a letter thanking them, and Damien kept it on his desk as a reminder of why they were doing this. Marcus became head of security for the new council, implementing protocols that prioritize protection over intimidation. He hired people who'd been on the fringes, gave them legitimate work, and built loyalty through respect rather than fear. And Damien and Alara? They moved out of the penthouse. Too many ghosts, too many memories of who they'd been before they became who they were meant to be. They found a house on the edge of the city with a garden and windows that let in light. It wasn't grand. It wasn't a statement of power, but it was theirs. 6 months after Rossini's exile, they stood in that garden at sunset, Damien's arms around Alara's waist, watching the city glow in the distance. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The games, the strategy, the constant chess match?" "Sometimes," Alara admitted. "But then I remember what I was fighting for. Survival, invisibility, the chance to matter." She turned in his arms. "Now I fight for something better. For us, for the world we're building. That's worth more than any game. Even when it's harder? Especially when it's harder." She kissed him. Easy victories don't change anything. Hard-won ones change everything. They'd been married once in a ceremony that meant nothing. So they did it again 2 months later in a small ceremony that meant everything. No council members, no politics, just people who loved them, in a garden full of light, with vows they wrote themselves. Damien promised to see her, always, in every version of herself she chose to show him, to trust her judgment, support her vision, and never ask her to be smaller than she was. Alara promised to choose him, every day, even when it was hard, to build with him instead of against him, to be his partner in all things, forever. They exchanged rings, not platinum this time, but gold, warm and alive. And when they kissed, the small crowd cheered. Later that night, lying in bed in their new house, Alara traced patterns on Damien's chest. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous." She smiled. "About what comes next. We've stabilized the council, reformed operations, built legitimate businesses. But there's more we could do." "Such as?" "Education. Real opportunities for people who want out of this life. Job training, housing assistance, protection from retaliation." Her eyes were bright with possibility. "We could create something that helps people escape instead of just managing the system that traps them." Damien listened, watching her face light up as she outlined plans, strategies, timelines. This was who she was. Not the invisible girl who hid behind glasses, not the ice queen who ruled through strategy, but both, and more. A woman who saw broken systems and wanted to fix them. Who had the mind to plan and the heart to care. "Let's do it," he said. "Just like that?" "Just like that." "You've never steered us wrong. I trust you." Alara's expression softened. "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me." "Really? More romantic than I love you?" "Much more. Love is easy to say. Trust is hard to give." She kissed him. "And you gave it anyway." They spent that night planning their future. Not just their future, but the future of everyone who'd been trapped by the same system that had once defined them. It would take years, maybe decades, but they had time, and they had each other. A year later, the foundation opened its first center. Job training, legal services, counseling, housing assistance. Everything someone needed to build a life outside the empire. The first week, they had 3 applicants. By the end of the month, they had 300. People came because they'd heard the stories. About a crime boss who chose mercy over murder. About a woman who'd been invisible until she decided to be seen. About a couple who'd turned an empire built on fear into something that actually helped people. The stories grew, changing with each telling. Some were exaggerated, some were simplified. But at their core, they were true. Damien Vexley and Alara Crown had taken a world built on violence and transformed it into something better. Not perfect, not pure, but better. And better, they'd learned, was always worth fighting for. 5 years after their second wedding, Damien stood at the window of his office. Not the penthouse now, but a modest space in the Foundation's headquarters, and watched people stream through the doors below. Former criminals trying to go legitimate. Families seeking help. Social workers, lawyers, teachers, all working together to build something new. Alara appeared beside him, her hand finding his. "Rossini was right about one thing," she said quietly. "What's that?" "This did cost us everything. The old empire, the old power, the old certainty that control was the only truth." She looked up at him. "But what we built instead is worth so much more." Damien pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "No regrets?" "Not one." She smiled. "Well, maybe one." "Oh?" "I wish I'd met you sooner. before we were both so damaged by the life, before we needed fixing. If we'd met sooner, we wouldn't have been who we needed to be for each other. Damien turned her to face him. You needed to learn to survive by being underestimated. I needed to learn that power without purpose is just violence. We had to walk our paths to get here. Very philosophical. I learned from the best. Below, someone laughed, a child maybe, or someone finally free from fear. The sound drifted up through the open window, bright and hopeful. That's why we do this, Alara said softly. For that sound. For the chance that someone else gets to laugh without looking over their shoulder. For the chance that someone else gets to choose who they become. Like we did. Like we did. They stood together as the sun set over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The empire still existed, crime still happened, violence still lurked in the shadows. But it was quieter now, more controlled. And slowly, year by year, more people were choosing to step into the light. Damien had learned that his greatest power wasn't the empire he'd inherited or the fear he could command. It was becoming the kind of man worthy of a woman who refused to be invisible, who saw the world's brokenness and decided to fix it, who loved him not despite his darkness, but because she understood it and helped him transform it into light. And Alara had learned that being seen didn't mean being vulnerable, that partnership wasn't weakness, that choosing to trust someone, to love someone, to build with someone was the bravest thing she'd ever done. Together, they'd proven that redemption was possible, that people could change, that empires built on fear could become foundations built on hope. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were no perfect endings, no happily ever afters that erased all the pain that came before. But there was this. Two people who chose each other every day, through every challenge, who built something meaningful from the ashes of violence, who proved that love, real love, could be just as powerful as any weapon, maybe more powerful. Because in the end, fear could only control people. But love? Love could change them. And changing the world one person at a time was the greatest power of all. Years from now, people would tell stories about them, about the crime boss who learned to choose mercy, about the invisible woman who became impossible to ignore, about the empire that transformed from a weapon into a refuge. Some details would be wrong, some would be embellished, but the heart of the story would remain true. Two people, one impossible love, a world forever changed. And in the quiet moments, when Damien held Alara close and felt her heartbeat against his chest, he knew with absolute certainty that every moment of pain, every impossible choice, every terrifying risk had been worth it, because it led him here, to her, to this life they'd built together, to home. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I know, she whispered back, and I love you, always. Always. The city glowed below them, full of possibility and promise. And somewhere in that vast sprawl of light and shadow, another person was making the choice to step forward, to reach out, to believe that change was possible. Because Damien and Alara had proven it was, and that legacy, that gift of hope, would outlive them both. The end of one story, the beginning of countless others, and in between a love that refused to be anything less than extraordinary.